The gavel struck, sounding like a gunshot in the silent courtroom. Ariana Hayes watched her life dissolve. Her husband, Mason Thorne, a man who built an empire on her ideas, smirked as the judge declared her penniless. As she walked out of the Manhattan courthouse clutching a single cardboard box, his laughter echoed in the marble hall, a cold, sharp sound of absolute victory. He thought he had destroyed her. He thought she was nothing. What Mason didn't know is that nothing is the most dangerous thing a person can be. He would see her again, but not in court. He'd see her from the ground as she stepped out of a billionaire's jet. The fluorescent lights of the Honorable Daniel P. Moynihan Courthouse hummed a flat, indifferent sound that burrowed into Ariana Hayes' skull. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and the expensive, cloying cologne of her husband's legal team. And based on the terms of the prenuptial agreement signed January 14, 2018, said Judge Maria Rinaldi, her voice devoid of emotion, all assets, properties, and holdings acquired during the marriage are designated as the sole property of Mr. Mason Thorne. Ariana's lawyer, a court-appointed junior associate who looked perpetually exhausted, slumped slightly. He had tried. He had argued duress. He had argued unconscionability. But Mason's legal team, led by the infamous pit bull Benjamin Karras, had systematically dismantled every claim. The prenup had been presented to her at the rehearsal dinner, a sheaf of papers Mason had laughed off as just a formality, darling, for the investors. He had poured her champagne, his hand on her back, his voice a velvet whisper. "It's just to protect the company, Ariana. Our company." Now that company, Thorne Global Properties, was valued at $9 billion, an empire she had helped build. Ariana had been his chief strategist. Her mind, her analysis, her uncanny ability to see market trends 3 steps before anyone else had been the rocket fuel. He was the face, the charismatic salesman who sealed the deals. She was the architect, the one who drew the blueprints in silence. And like a fool, she had drawn them on his stationery. In accordance with this finding, the judge continued, the court denies Ms. Hayes' petition for alimony. All joint accounts are to be released to Mr. Thorne. The residence at 740 Park Avenue is to be vacated by Ms. Hayes by 6:30 p.m. this evening. A ripple of motion. Mason Thorne, immaculate in a bespoke Tom Ford suit, leaned back. He didn't look at Ariana. He was checking his watch, a Patek Philippe, one she'd bought him after their first big success in the Hudson Yards redevelopment. In the gallery, his new associate, a 22-year-old influencer named Candace, stifled a small theatrical cough, her diamond bracelet catching the light. This court is adjourned. The gavel cracked sharp and final. It was over. 10 years of her life erased. Reporters sensing blood surged forward, but Mason's security, 2 massive men in dark suits, formed a human wall. Ariana, however, was invisible. They parted for her as if she were a ghost. She walked out of the courtroom, her cheap pumps clicking hollowly on the marble. In her hands was a small cardboard banker's box, the sum total of her new life. Inside, a change of clothes, her laptop, which Karras' team had graciously allowed after wiping it clean, and a framed photo of her and Mason on their wedding day, a photo she now despised. She reached the grand, echoing rotunda of the courthouse. She stopped, needing a single second to breathe before facing the cold October rain, and then she heard it. "Mason, darling, are we late for the Nobu reservation?" Candace's high, breathy voice. "Plenty of time, kitten." Ariana didn't turn, but she saw their reflection in the glass of the heavy wooden doors. Mason was adjusting his tie, a smile playing on his handsome face. He caught her reflection. Their eyes met in the glass. He saw her, standing there, shoulders slumped, holding her pathetic box. A woman he had drained of all value and was now discarding. A low chuckle started in his chest. It grew into a full, rich laugh. It wasn't a ha-ha laugh. It was a laugh of pure, unadulterated contempt. A laugh that said, "You thought you were my partner. You were just an employee. And now you're fired." He put his arm around Candace's tiny waist, kissed her temple, and pushed open the door. They swept past Ariana, carried on a wave of his arrogance and her perfume, and disappeared into the back of a waiting Maybach. The laughter hung in the air, echoing off the stone. It was the cruelest sound she had ever heard. It was burned into her skin, into her bones. Ariana stood frozen for a full minute. The sound of that laugh was a brand searing into her memory. It was the period at the end of a sentence that had been her life. She pushed the door open. The New York rain hit her instantly, cold and biting. She didn't have an umbrella. Her Maybach was gone. Her driver was gone. Her home was gone. She walked down the steps, the cardboard box getting damp. She had $400 in a personal bank account Mason had forgotten to freeze, and a mountain of personal debt he had allocated to her during the divorce, legal fees, credit cards he had opened in her name. She was by all accounts ruined. She walked past the line of black cars, past the reporters huddled under umbrellas, and kept walking until she reached the subway station. That night she didn't check into a hotel. She couldn't afford one. She checked into the Starlight Motel in a rough part of Queens, a place where the rooms were paid by the hour and the sheets smelled of bleach and despair. She sat on the lumpy bed, the box at her feet. The sound of the city, so familiar now, felt alien and hostile. She opened her laptop. The screen was black, then lit up with the factory default welcome screen. Wiped clean. 10 years of work, of memos, of strategies, of her all gone. The laugh echoed in her ears again. "You're nothing." "We'll see," she whispered to the peeling wallpaper, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "We'll see, Mason." The despair was a cold ocean, but the laugh was a single hard piece of flint. And in the absolute darkness of that motel room, Ariana Hayes struck it. The next 6 weeks were a masterclass in humiliation. Ariana Hayes, the woman who once advised on multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, was now learning the subtle art of existing on $20 a day. The Starlight Motel was a temporary, soul-crushing stop. She quickly moved to a tiny, windowless room in a shared apartment in Bushwick found on Craigslist. Her roommates were 3 20-somethings who worked in hospitality and mistook her quiet intensity for arrogance. She who had once debated zoning laws with senators now argued over a chore wheel for cleaning the single grime-caked bathroom. Her days were spent in the fluorescent hum of the New York Public Library on 42nd Street. It was warm, it was free, and it had Wi-Fi. Her first, most crushing realization was that Mason hadn't just divorced her, he had professionally executed her. "Ariana, your resume is formidable," said a VP at Blackstone, an old acquaintance, over the phone. His voice was strained. "But the thing is, there just isn't a fit right now. The market's tight." A fit. She had defined the fit for a decade. The second call with a headhunter from KPG was more blunt. "Listen, Ariana, off the record, you're radioactive. Karis and Thorne's legal team sent, let's call it a portfolio, to every major player in the city. Non-competes, NDAs, and a very strong inference of unstable behavior. I'm sorry. No one will touch you." He had blacklisted her. He hadn't just taken her past, he had stolen her future. The $400 vanished. The legal debts, however, did not. The letters started arriving forwarded from her old address with cruel efficiency. Red ink. Final notice. She sold her wedding ring, the one thing the prenup hadn't covered. The jeweler on 47th Street barely looked at her. He saw the desperation, the good coat that was now slightly worn, the hollows under her eyes. He offered her $3,000 for a ring she knew was worth at least $50,000. She took it. It was 3 more months of rent and instant noodles. She applied for lower-level jobs. Analyst, assistant strategist, office manager. She was either overqualified or, after they ran her name, not a good fit. She was trapped in a no-man's land. One night, eating a bodega sandwich that tasted like damp cardboard, she scrolled through the news. A glossy photo of Mason and Candace filled the screen. They were at the Helios Foundation Gala. Mason was announcing his new flagship project, the one she had warned him against, Helios Green City. It was a multi-hundred-billion-dollar development in the Hudson Valley, promising a fully sustainable, carbon-neutral metropolis. "The future of urban living," the headline blared. Investors were pouring in. Ariana had told him the land was unstable. She had run the geological surveys herself. The bedrock was fractured and the water table was contaminated from an old industrial plant. It was a money pit. A beautiful, glittering, fraudulent money pit. "He's too arrogant," she'd told him a year ago in their Park Avenue living room. "The cleanup costs alone will bankrupt the project before you break ground. You're selling a fantasy." "You're too cautious, Ariana." He had dismissed, swirling his brandy. "That's why I'm the face and you're the books. People don't buy reality. They buy the dream." Now watching him sell that dream, a cold academic fury replaced her despair. He wasn't just a monster. He was a stupid monster. And he was going to get away with it. That night she made a call. It was her last resort. "Sarah, it's Ariana. Ariana Hayes." Silence on the other end. Sarah Jenkins had been her best friend in business school, but Ariana had let the friendship wither, consumed by Mason's world. "Ariana," Sarah finally said, her voice wary. "Wow, it's been a while." "I know. I know. I'm sorry, Sarah. I really am. I'm calling to ask for a favor. I need a job. Anything. I'll get coffee. I'll run copies. I'm not in a good place." The old familiar warmth returned to Sarah's voice, mixed with pity. "Oh, Ariana. I read the post. It's brutal. I can't believe. Look, I'd hire you in a second, you know that. But my firm, we're a small fry tech consultancy. We're in the middle of a strategic review. We're being acquired." Ariana's heart sank. Another dead end. "Oh, well, congratulations. That's huge." "Yeah, it's terrifying, actually. The acquiring firm is intense. They're like ghosts. No press, no profile. Just a name on a letterhead." "Who is it?" Ariana asked, listlessly, stirring her noodles. "A private equity group. Stryker Innovations. Ever heard of them?" Ariana's spoon stopped. Stryker Innovations. Not just a name. The name. The firm was less a company and more a myth in the financial world. They didn't just buy companies, they absorbed them. They were rumored to be run by one man, a reclusive shadows and dust billionaire named Damien Stryker. He was the bogeyman of the S&P 500. He moved in silence, and when he struck it was always fatal. He was known for two things: an obsession with disruptive technology and an absolute intolerance for fraud. "They're acquiring you," Ariana said, her voice suddenly sharp. "Yeah, the due diligence is insane. They're sending in a team to audit every line of code we've ever written. They're led by this woman, an Evelyn Reed. She's not human. She's like a Terminator in a pencil skirt. Why?" Ariana's mind was no longer in her grimy apartment. It was moving at its old forgotten speed. The pieces were clicking into place. Stryker, Helios, Mason. "Sarah," Ariana said, standing up. "I don't need a job. I need a meeting. I need you to get me 10 minutes with Evelyn Reed." "What, Ariana? I can't. She doesn't do meetings. She gives orders." "Tell her I have information. Tell her I know where the bodies are buried in the Helios Green City project. Tell her Mason Thorne is building a $9 billion house of cards on a toxic swamp, and I can prove it." "Ariana, what are you? Are you trying to get revenge? I don't want to get involved in your divorce." "This isn't about my divorce," Ariana snapped with a fire that surprised them both. "This is about a massive fraudulent public offering. Stryker Innovations plays in the same markets. They have overlapping investors. Thorne's fraud is going to poison the well for everyone. She needs to hear this. Tell her I was his chief strategist. Tell her I have the real data." There was a long pause. Sarah sighed. "Okay, I'll try. I'll email her. But Ariana, be careful. These people are not like Mason. They're different. They're dangerous." "So am I, Sarah," Ariana said, hanging up the phone. "I just forgot." She looked at the picture of Mason on her laptop screen. his arrogant, smiling face. She wasn't going to crawl back. She was going to burn his kingdom down and use the ashes as leverage. 2 days later, an email arrived. It was not from Sarah. The sender was eread@stryker.global. The subject line was blank. The body contained only a time and an address. 10:00 a.m. Tomorrow, 30 Hudson Yards, 90th floor. Do not be late. No name, no confirmation, no pleasantries. It was a summons. Ariana looked at her wardrobe. It was a sparse collection of worn-out interview clothes. She took $200 of her dwindling cash and went to a high-end consignment shop on the Upper East Side. She found what she was looking for, a simple, impeccably cut black sheath dress by Acris. It was 5 years old, but it was timeless. It was armor. She spent the entire night not on her appearance but at the NYPL, fueled by stale coffee from a thermos. She wasn't just going to present a problem. She was going to present an opportunity. She ripped apart the Helios Green City prospectus. She cross-referenced the contaminated land data which she had by some miracle of foresight backed up on a personal thumb drive with current EPA databases. She pulled the debt covenants Mason had filed with the SEC. She analyzed the bond structures he was using for his Phase 2 funding. She found it. The linchpin. Mason wasn't just hiding the cleanup costs. He was actively falsifying the environmental reports and using those fraudulent reports to secure green bonds from European investors. It wasn't just a lie. It was wire fraud, securities fraud, and a dozen other felonies. But she went deeper. She analyzed the real value of the land, not as a city but as something else. The fractured bedrock he saw as a flaw. She saw as a perfect location for something else entirely. Geothermal energy generation. She finished her presentation at 5:00 a.m. It was 12 slides. No filler, just facts, figures, and a conclusion so brutal it was beautiful. At 9:45 a.m., Ariana walked into the lobby of 30 Hudson Yards. The building was a monument to new money, all glass and steel soaring into the sky. She who had helped design the financial models for this very building now felt like an insect. She gave her name to the security desk. The guard's eyes widened slightly as he looked at his screen. Ms. Hayes, right this way. You have priority access. A private elevator. It didn't have buttons, just a single glowing panel. The ascent was silent and breathtakingly fast. Her ears popped. The doors opened directly into the 90th floor reception. There was no art, no furniture save for a single black granite desk. The walls were 40-foot panes of glass looking down on New York City. It felt less like an office and more like the lair of a god. A woman with hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing a minimalist gray suit, stood waiting. She was in her late 40s with eyes so pale blue they looked like ice. Ms. Hayes, I am Evelyn Reed. You have 10 minutes. Walk with me. She didn't offer coffee. She didn't offer a seat. She simply turned and began walking down a long glass corridor. Ariana fell into step beside her. My time is valuable, Evelyn said, not looking at her. Your friend claimed you have actionable intelligence on the Helios project. Begin. Mr. Thorne is not just underestimating cleanup costs, Ariana said, her voice steady. He is actively committing securities fraud by falsifying EPA submissions to secure green bonds. Evelyn's pace didn't change. We are aware. We've known for 6 weeks. His bond issuers in Frankfurt are our partners. We're already positioned to short his stock into oblivion when the news breaks. Ariana's heart hammered. A test. She had been tested. This was the moment. You're seeing the problem, Ariana said, stopping. Evelyn stopped and turned, raising one eyebrow. Am I? You're seeing the fraud. You're not seeing the opportunity. You short him, you make a few $100 million. You expose the toxicity, the project dies, and the land becomes a worthless Superfund site for 30 years. That's a janitor's move. It's clean, but it's not smart. Evelyn Reed's icy eyes narrowed. This was the first flicker of genuine interest. Go on. Mason is trying to build a city on the land. He's a real estate man. He sees the surface. He doesn't see what's under it. The fractured bedrock, the high-temperature gradient, it's a structural nightmare for skyscrapers. But it's a perfect vessel for a closed-loop geothermal power plant. Ariana pulled her laptop from her bag. She didn't wait for permission. She opened it and held it up. Helios Green City is a fraud, but the land is a multi-billion-dollar energy source. Stryker Innovations has a renewable energy division. You let Mason continue. You let him leverage himself to the hilt for his Phase 2 funding. He's desperate. He'll take toxic loans. You wait for him to break ground. The moment his excavators hit the aquifer and the EPA shuts him down, that's when you strike. Strike how? Evelyn asked, her voice a whisper. You don't just short the stock. You buy the debt. You buy it all. From the bondholders in Frankfurt, from the private lenders in Zurich. When he defaults, and he will, you don't seize the company. You seize the asset. The land itself. You get it for pennies on the dollar. You let Thorne Global Properties collapse and Stryker Innovations builds the largest geothermal power plant on the East Coast, powering half of New York. Ariana closed the laptop. You don't just make him a cautionary tale. You make him a footnote. You make billions, not millions, and it's all legal. Silence. The only sound was the wind whistling against the glass 90 stories up. Evelyn Reed stared at Ariana. The 10 minutes had come and gone. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of her mouth. Everyone comes in here offering revenge, Evelyn said softly. They're emotional. They're messy. You came in here offering a balance sheet. You didn't just bring him a coffin. You brought him the nails and the blueprints for the cemetery. Revenge is a byproduct, Ms. Reed. This is just good business. Mr. Stryker hates Mason Thorne. It's an old rivalry from before your time. I didn't know that. Ariana lied, remembering Sarah's casual comment. No. Evelyn said, her smile widening. I'm sure you didn't. She tapped her watch. Mr. Stryker is on the Odyssey, docked at Chelsea Piers. He's expecting you. Now. Expecting me? I told you. We knew you were coming. We've been watching you since the day you left that courtroom, Ms. Hayes. We've been watching you in the library. We've been watching you at the consignment shop. We wanted to see what you were made of. Most people, they break. They get bitter. You got focused. Evelyn turned and walked back to the elevator. A car is waiting downstairs. Don't make him wait. What? What about my presentation? Ariana asked, holding her laptop. He's already seen it, Evelyn said, not looking back. I streamed it to his tablet from your laptop the second you opened it. This meeting was the final test. You passed. The elevator doors opened. Ariana stepped inside, her mind reeling. She had walked in as a beggar. She was leaving as something else entirely. The black Mercedes S-Class moved through Manhattan traffic with the serene indifference of a shark. Ariana sat in the buttery leather, her mind struggling to catch up. She had been under surveillance. Stryker hadn't just been aware of Mason. He had a file. And now she was part of it. The car stopped at Pier 59 at Chelsea Piers. Standing at the end of the dock, dwarfing the other multi-million-dollar yachts, was the Odyssey. It wasn't a yacht. It was a ship. A 400-foot behemoth of matte gray steel and smoked glass, it looked more like a naval destroyer than a pleasure craft. There was no gold, no gaudy ornamentation. It was a statement of pure brutalist power. A single crew member dressed in a simple black uniform escorted her up the gangway. She was led to a lounge at the stern. The room was a library walled with books on philosophy, physics, and antique maps. And sitting in a minimalist chair looking out at the Hudson River was a man. He wasn't what she expected. He wasn't a slick, tailored CEO. Damien Stryker was in his late 50s with a shock of untamed gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a simple black cashmere sweater. He looked like a renegade university professor. But when he turned his eyes were the most intense, intelligent, and unsettling things she had ever seen. They were the color of coal, and they seemed to see everything. "Ms. Hayes, Ariana, please sit." His voice was quiet with a slight, unplaceable European accent. Ariana sat opposite him. There was no table between them. "Evelyn is impressed," he said. "Evelyn is never impressed. She thinks you're a scalpel." "I agree." "Thank you, Mr. Stryker." "Damien, Mr. Stryker is what people call me before I fire them." He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "You hate Mason Thorne." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. "I have a professional disagreement with his business model," Ariana said carefully. Damien smiled. Not with me. Let's be clear, I despise him. Mason Thorne is a parasite. He's a symptom of a disease in our economy, a man who builds nothing, who creates nothing, who only brands. He's a hollow man, and hollow men must be broken. He stood and walked to the window. 20 years ago, I had a data analytics firm, my first company. We were on the verge of a breakthrough in predictive AI. We needed one more round of funding. Mason Thorne, then just a junior VP at a larger firm, handled our portfolio. He saw our tech. He deliberately sank our funding round, lied to our investors, and then he and his firm absorbed our IP in the bankruptcy. He built his first fortune on the bones of my work, on the graves of my partners. The room was silent. Ariana finally understood. This wasn't just business for Stryker either. He didn't just ruin me. Damien continued, his voice dangerously soft. He laughed. He held a party at the 21 Club to celebrate the acquisition. I was outside. I was the man serving the champagne. He didn't even recognize me. Ariana felt a chill run down her spine. The laugh. It was the same story. "So yes, Ariana, I want him ruined. I want him dismantled. I want his name to be a warning. But I do not believe in simple revenge. Revenge is a fire that burns the wielder. I believe in outcomes." He turned back to her. "Your plan is excellent. It's smart, it's profitable, and it's lethal. But it's missing one thing." "What's that?" You're trying to give this to me. You're trying to sell me the map. I don't want the map, Ariana. I want the cartographer." He sat back down. "I am not offering you a job. I don't hire analysts. I anoint generals. The geothermal project, it's yours. I'm opening a new division of Stryker Innovations, Stryker Urban Dynamics. You will be its president. You will have an unlimited line of credit. You will have Evelyn's legal team. You will have my undivided support." Ariana was stunned. "President, you will oversee the acquisition of Thorne's debt. You will manage the seizure of the Helios asset, and you will build that power plant. You will not just be the architect of his ruin, you will be the architect of the future that replaces him. I am giving you the sword, Ariana. Show me how you swing it." This was more than she could have imagined. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. "What do you get out of this?" she asked, her voice a near whisper. "Two things," Damien said, holding up his fingers. "One, the Helios land is a brilliant strategic asset. Your geothermal plan will revolutionize the energy grid in this city. It will make us billions, and it will actually help people. Unlike Mason's fantasy city. Two," a dark smile touched his lips, "I get to watch. I get to see the look on his face when he realizes that the nothing he threw away was the one thing that could destroy him. That is my price, Ariana. You must be the one to do it. You must be the face of his reckoning." "He won't see me coming," Ariana said, the old fire returning, burning hotter, now refined. "Oh, he won't see you at all. Not until the very end." Damien stood extending a hand. You start today. You are no longer Ariana Hayes the victim. You are President Hayes of Stryker Urban Dynamics. Evelyn has an apartment for you at 15 Central Park West. Your new life has begun. Go to work. Ariana shook his hand. His grip was like steel. She walked off the Odyssey and back into the waiting Mercedes. She was the same woman who had entered the motel in Queens, but she was entirely remade. The despair was gone, burned away. The humiliation was gone. All that remained was the cold, clear, brilliant purpose. The laugh had been the flint. The abyss had been the darkness. Damien Stryker had just handed her the steel, and Ariana Hayes was ready to start a fire. The next 18 months were a blur of transformation. Ariana Hayes ceased to exist. In her place, President Hayes was forged. Her new apartment at 15 Central Park West overlooked the park, a vantage point of power and silence. But she was rarely there. Her new home was a sterile, high-tech office in the Stryker building and the first-class cabins of jets flying to Zurich, Frankfurt, and Hong Kong. Damien Stryker was true to his word. He was not a boss, he was a mentor. He was less a CEO and more a grandmaster of chess. He didn't tell her what to do, he taught her how to think. Never attack the king directly, Ariana. He'd advise moving a piece on the rare ivory board in his office. The king is a symbol protected by pawns and knights. You don't attack him. You isolate him. You buy his bishops. You turn his knights. You cut off his supply lines. When you finally go for him, he must be completely, utterly alone. Checkmate. Ariana learned. She wasn't just Ariana, the brilliant analyst. She became Ariana, the strategist, the general. Her first move was silence. She vanished from New York social and professional circles. As far as the world was concerned, she had disappeared, a tragic footnote in Mason Thorne's meteoric rise. Meanwhile, Mason was flying high. Helios Green City was the darling of the financial world. He was on the cover of Forbes and Fortune. He and Candace were the new it couple, their Instagram filled with charity galas and trips to St. Bart's. He was borrowing money at an astonishing rate, leveraging every asset he had to fund the massive project. He was arrogant, overextended, and blind. Ariana, operating through a series of shell corporations and cutouts established by Evelyn Reed's team, began her work. She started in Germany. She met with the board of the Frankfurt-based bank that held the first tranche of Mason's green bonds. She didn't present the fraud. Instead, she presented an alternative and immediate quiet buyout of the entire debt portfolio at 95 cents on the dollar. Mr. Thorne's project is ambitious, she told the skeptical German bankers. Stryker Innovations believes the risk profile is too high. We are willing to take that risk off your hands. It gives you immediate liquidity and zero exposure. They saw it as a bad bet by a competitor. They saw free money. They sold. Next, Zurich, a private hedge fund that had given Mason a massive bridge loan. This was harder. They were sharks. So Ariana gave them blood. She anonymously leaked just enough of the real EPA data to one of their junior analysts. 2 days later, the fund called her. They were terrified their investment was about to go to zero. Ariana, through another shell company, offered to buy the debt at a distressed price, 60 cents on the dollar. They snapped it up, grateful to escape. She repeated this process in Hong Kong and London and Dubai. She didn't buy all his debt, just the key pieces, the ones with the strictest covenants, the ones that, if defaulted, gave the holder seizure rights over the land itself. In 18 months, Ariana Hayes, as president of Stryker Urban Dynamics, became the primary creditor for Helios Green City. She owned Mason Thorne. He just didn't know it. During this time, she was also building. She hired a skunkworks team of the world's best geothermal engineers and urban planners. In a secure facility in Nevada, they began drawing up the blueprints for the Stryker resonance plant. It was her vision, her project. Her transformation was total. The consignment shop dress was replaced by bespoke suits from Xenia and the Row. Her hair was cut into a sharp, efficient bob. Her voice, once hesitant, was now low and measured. She learned to command a room with silence. She spoke with Damien weekly. "He's broken ground," she reported one day, standing on a hillside overlooking the Helios site from a mile away, binoculars in hand. "And," Damien's voice came over her earpiece, "and just as we predicted, they hit the aquifer at 30 meters. The eastern site is already flooding. My anonymous tip to the EPA regional office went in an hour ago. They'll have inspectors there by nightfall." "He'll try to bribe them," Damien said. "He will. And the inspector he tries to bribe is an undercover FBI agent from the Public Corruption Unit, a little cross-agency cooperation Evelyn arranged." Damien chuckled. "The night has been turned. Well done." The next day, the stop-work orders were issued. The news hit Bloomberg. Thorne Global's stock stuttered. Mason predictably panicked. He called a press conference. He called it a minor bureaucratic hurdle, a temporary delay. To prove his project was sound, he did exactly what Ariana's psychological profile predicted he would do. He doubled down. He announced a massive black-tie Helios gala to be held at the project's glittering sales center. He would unveil his Phase 2 plans and bring in his final round of A-list investors. It was a desperate, arrogant move to save face. "He's hosting a party," Ariana told Damien, walking into his office on the 90th floor. "He's inviting his friends to his own execution," Damien replied, not looking up from a map. "The gala is in 3 days. All his covenants have a material delay clause. The EPA shutdown triggered all of them. He is now in technical default. We have the right to call in the debt, all of it. Now." Damien looked up. "It is time. Are you ready, Ariana?" Ariana thought back to that courtroom. She thought of the cheap motel. She thought of his laugh. The memory was no longer a hot brand. It was a cold, smooth stone in her hand. "Send the jet," she said. "I'm flying back to New York." The night of the Helios Gala was a tempest. A furious late autumn nor'easter was lashing the Hudson Valley. Wind and rain hammered the glass walls of the Helios Experience Center, a billion-dollar sales gallery Mason had built before even laying a proper foundation for the city. Inside it was a bubble of forced festivity. A string quartet played nervously over the howl of the wind. Waiters circulated with champagne and caviar. Mason Thorne, looking slightly strained, but still radiating arrogant charm, worked the room. His Phase 2 investors, billionaires, hedge fund managers, and sovereign wealth representatives were huddled in anxious groups, whispering about the EPA shutdown and the plunging stock. "A temporary setback. A political shakedown," Mason boomed, tapping a glass for attention. He was on a small stage in front of a massive, glowing architectural model of the city that would never be. "The fact that you all braved this storm tonight shows your commitment. Helios is not just a project. It's a destiny." Candace, dripping in diamonds, clapped a little too enthusiastically. Outside, the storm was getting worse. The private airfield nearby, built for the convenience of investors, had been officially closed by the FAA an hour ago. Nothing was landing. Then through the din of the storm came a new sound, a low tearing whistle that grew into a ground-shaking roar. The champagne flutes on the tables trembled. "What in God's name is that?" a banker from Goldman Sachs muttered, looking at the ceiling. All eyes turned to the massive glass walls. Through the sheeting rain, 2 brilliant white landing lights pierced the darkness, descending at an impossibly steep angle. "That's impossible," Mason's pilot whispered, standing near the bar. "The crosswinds are over 60 knots. No one can land in this." But it was landing. The plane was a sleek silver Predator, a Gulfstream G700, the newest and most advanced private jet in the world, renowned for its ability to handle extreme weather. It touched down on the flooded runway with a smoothness that defied physics. It didn't taxi to the terminal. It taxied right up the service road, its wingtips clearing the trees by mere feet, and stopped on the plaza directly in front of the gala. Its engines spooled down the roar, settling into a low, ominous hum. The quartet's music died. The entire party was silent, staring at the apparition. "Who the hell is that?" Mason demanded, his bravado cracking. That's not on the guest list." A hydraulic staircase hissed and unfolded from the fuselage. The cabin door opened. First, two figures emerged. They were both dressed in severe dark suits. One was Evelyn Reed. The other was a man Ariana's team had simply called the Closer, the head of Stryker's corporate litigation. They fanned out standing at the bottom of the steps, holding umbrellas that immediately inverted in the wind. Then a third figure appeared in the doorway. The figure was silhouetted against the bright cabin light. It was a woman. She wore a single-breasted, cream-white power suit by Zegna. No dress, no jewelry, save for a simple, elegant watch. Her hair was cut in that sharp, familiar bob. She paused at the top of the stairs, looking at the gala at the building, at the glowing, fraudulent model of Mason's dream. Inside the party, Mason Thorne squinted. His smile froze. His face went slack. The glass of champagne in his hand began to tremble. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." Ariana Hayes descended the steps. She didn't rush. The wind whipped her suit, but she seemed as unbothered as the steel of the jet behind her. She walked through the driving rain, Evelyn Reed and the lawyer falling into step on either side of her. The glass doors of the gala hissed open. Ariana walked inside. The quartet, the waiters, the billionaires, everyone just stared. She was not the woman they remembered, if they remembered her at all. The desperate, broken wife was gone. This woman was something else. She was a CEO. She was a general. She was a reckoning. She walked past the whispering crowds, her heels clicking on the imported Italian marble. She didn't look left or right. Her eyes were fixed on one person. She stopped at the foot of the stage, looking up at her ex-husband. Mason's face had gone the color of ash. The arrogant smirk, the confident posture, all gone. He was looking at a ghost. Ariana smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that has finally cornered its prey after a very, very long hunt. "Mason," she said, her voice clear and carrying across the silent room. "A lovely party. What a shame you're having it on my property." The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the howl of the wind outside. Mason Thorne stared at Ariana, his mouth opening and closing. "Ariana, what is this? Some kind of joke?" He tried for a laugh, but it came out as a strangled cough. "What are you doing here? Get out. Security?" "They can't," Ariana said calmly. "Your security firm's contract was with Thorne Global. As of 5:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the board of Thorne Global, a board now controlled by its primary creditor, voted to terminate that contract. My security is now handling this site." On cue, the two men at the door were joined by four more, all emerging from the storm, all wearing the same simple black uniforms as the Odyssey's crew. They quietly and efficiently secured the exits. What creditor?" a panicked investor shouted from the crowd. Ariana turned, addressing the room as if it were her own boardroom. "That would be me, or more accurately, Stryker Urban Dynamics, of which I am president." She gestured to Evelyn Reed. "My legal counsel is now handing each of you a portfolio. Please take one." Evelyn and her team moved through the crowd, handing out thin, elegant folders bound in black. "What you will find inside," Ariana continued, her voice cutting through the panic, "is a detailed breakdown of the debt restructuring. You see, Mr. Thorne has been in default on his primary loan covenants for 72 hours ever since the EPA shut down this site. The debt holders, the bank in Frankfurt, the fund in Zurich, the consortium in Hong Kong, they all chose to sell their positions rather than enter a messy bankruptcy. Stryker Innovations acquired them all." Mason staggered back, grabbing the podium for support. You did this. The EPA. The leaks. That was you." "I simply provided the relevant agencies with the truth," Ariana said, her voice cold. "The truth you've been spending billions to hide. The contaminated water table. The fractured bedrock. The fact that this green city is and always was a catastrophic environmental disaster and a spectacular fraud." She stepped up onto the stage, standing next to the glowing billion-dollar model of the fake city. "You sold a dream, Mason, but you built it on a swamp. And now the note has come due." She turned back to him. Her face was granite. "As the sole creditor, Stryker Urban Dynamics has exercised its rights. We are not seizing your company. It's worthless. We are seizing the asset. This land, this building, everything. As of an hour ago, the deed was transferred. You, your investors, and your girlfriend. You are trespassing." Candace let out a small shriek and bolted for the door, diamonds rattling. No one stopped her. The investors were in uproar, shouting, checking their phones, calling their lawyers. They were rats on a sinking ship. But Ariana wasn't finished. She wasn't just here to take his company. She was here to fulfill the second part of Damien's price. But you can't," Mason stammered. He was ruined. He knew it. "Oh, it gets worse, Mason," Ariana said, taking a step closer. The lawyer on cue stepped forward and served Mason with a thick stack of papers. "Those," Ariana said, "are not from me. Those are from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. A federal indictment. Securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States via your fake EPA reports, and RICO." The color drained from Mason's face. RICO, the one that puts you away for 20 years. "The FBI agent you tried to bribe last week, he sends his regards. It seems destiny has a funny way of working out." Mason finally broke. The arrogant master of the universe crumpled. "Please, Ariana, please. You can't. I'll give you anything. A settlement. Half. Just. Call them off." He was begging, on his knees. The man who had laughed at her now begging. Ariana looked down at him, her expression unreadable. The room watched, holding its breath. She knelt so she was at his level. She was close enough to smell the fear on him, the scent of stale champagne and sweat. "I don't want your money, Mason," she whispered, so only he could hear. "I have my own. I don't want half of nothing. I want you to remember. I want you to remember this moment every day for the rest of your life. I want you to remember the sound of my jet." She paused, and then she gave him the final cut. "You laughed. You stood in that courthouse and you laughed at me as I walked away with nothing. You thought I was nothing. You thought you'd won." She stood up, smoothing the front of her Zegna suit. "You were right, Mason," she said, her voice ringing out for all to hear. "I did walk away with nothing. But the difference between you and me, I know how to build an empire from nothing. You only know how to lie." She turned, leaving him kneeling on the stage amidst the ruins of his paper kingdom. Federal agents who had been waiting outside with her team entered the room and walked calmly toward the stage. Ariana Hayes didn't look back. She walked through the crowd of stunned billionaires past the now silent string quartet and out the glass doors. The storm was already starting to break. Evelyn Reed was waiting for her at the bottom of the jet stairs, holding the door. "A clean outcome, Madam President," Evelyn said with that rare thin smile. "It's a start, Evelyn," Ariana replied, ascending the stairs. "The hard part begins tomorrow. I have a power plant to build." She stepped into the warm, quiet cabin of the G700. The door hissed shut, sealing out the storm. As the jet's powerful engines spooled up, turning to taxi back to the runway, Ariana looked out the window. She saw the flashing blue and red lights of the agents' cars reflecting off the wet marble. She saw the pale, defeated silhouette of Mason Thorne being led away. And she saw the investors, her new accidental tenants, scrambling in the rain, their illusions shattered. She didn't laugh. She just took a sip of water, opened her laptop, and got back to work. The greatest comebacks aren't just about getting rich. They're about reclaiming your power. Ariana didn't just get even. She got ahead. She proved that true success isn't about who you know or what you're given, but what you can build. While Mason Thorne's name became a byword for fraud, Ariana Hayes' name was etched onto the Stryker resonance plant a marvel of engineering that powers New York City to this day. She didn't just return in a billionaire's jet. She returned as the one in the pilot's seat. What did you think of Ariana's story? Was her revenge too much, or was it a perfect checkmate? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of justice and resilience, make sure to hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see it, and please subscribe to the channel for more true-to-life drama every single week. You won't want to miss what we have coming next.